Hey, y'all, as we close out the week and prepare for our first, what probably is our first user interview, as we go into next week, I just wanted to provide some maybe helpful tips and tricks and some things to maybe start thinking about now as you wrap up your testing script and head into the weekend to start maybe getting the ball rolling a little bit for some of the work that we'll be doing next week. And so as we've done this in the past, typically I've tried to include a little sneak peek or preview the week before, so y'all have an idea of what you'll be working on next week, and maybe you can get a head start if you're ahead of the game a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about preparing for your user interview. As it relates to this module, this is a quick 5-pointer. It's just to get you thinking about some of the things to lay the foundation for a successful week next week. It's never too early to start doing some of the things that we're going to be talking about right now in this module. Never too early to start thinking about how you might conduct your interviews, the type of technology you might use, who you might be interviewing, and maybe just sharing some thoughts about how you feel about going into your first user interview next week. So we'll just talk a little bit about preparing and conducting your first user interview. So as far as recruiting goes, I want to encourage you to start now if you haven't already. Start recruiting now. For next week's module, I'm going to ask you to interview 3 people who fit your primary persona. We're going to talk a little bit about what that means, so you don't have to lose sleep over trying to find the perfect, the right ideal person. But you'll be interviewing 3 people who pretty much fit your primary persona. And what that's going to do is provide feedback from different angles, from different people, from different backgrounds, but who maybe kind of fit a similar mold, to give you insights into how you can make your product better, how you can implement their feedback into your designs, into your wireframes, into how you structure your final app. So if you haven't already, start recruiting. You're going to be asked to do 3 people who fit your primary persona. A great place to start is social media. That's typically where I start. If I'm looking for recruits or maybe doing a freelance project where I might be needing to do some user interviews or to get some feedback or some thoughts on the front end of a project. And so no matter what social media platform you use, that whatever is your preference, it's a great place to start. Maybe just saying, hey, do I have any friends who work in this industry, who maybe have these qualifications about them, who'd be interested in spending 10 to 15 minutes with me? You'll probably find somebody. If not, there's other areas you can reach out. Think about friends, family, coworkers, peers or students if you have a college demographic, roommates, folks you went to high school with, perhaps, folks that a little bit older than you. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about doing this. Like I said, the thing that I've seen is maybe social media is a great place to start if you're looking for folks beyond maybe just friends and family who maybe fit your mold for your primary persona. As soon as you have somebody lined up, as soon as you say you have somebody that says, yeah, I kind of fit that, I'd be willing to jump in and give you some feedback, schedule some time. Put it on the books, put a calendar invite out there, whether that's, if you use Outlook's calendar or a calendar on your phone, schedule some time, get it on the books. That way it doesn't creep up on you. You've got it on there already. It puts the ball in your court, and just get it on the books, get it scheduled. Again, we're just looking for about 10 to 15 minutes of having a conversation with somebody, getting some ideas around how you can make your product better, some of those objectives, some of those questions that you want to ask as it relates to your product. So start recruiting looking for 3 people at minimum that fit your primary persona. Social media is a great place to start. Beyond that, friends, family, coworkers, roommates, peers, students, fellow colleagues, things like that. And then schedule some time. As soon as you find somebody who says, yep, I'm down, I'm game, get them on the books and start the conversation, and you'll be well on your way. Let's talk a little bit about finding your primary personas. I just pulled a couple of personas from some that y'all had submitted last week. And these are 2, I think, great examples of personas. You have Eli, who's 25. He's a teacher, a soccer coach in Roanoke, Virginia, as a casual camper. If you tried to find Eli who was 25 years old, who was a teacher from Roanoke, who liked camping, good luck. You're probably not going to find that specific of an individual. Remember, your personas are give a face to your end user. They're fictional, but they bring some of the goals, the struggles, the frustrations, the demographic information to light and allow you to empathize with that person, to connect with them, to kind of keep them at their forefront. But they are fictional. They represent a type of audience for your product. And so maybe for Eli, you might try to find somebody who's in their mid-20s, who maybe is a teacher or in school for teaching, or who coaches a sport on the side, and who enjoys camping. It can be as loose as that. And that would be somebody who might fit the mold for a persona, like Eli. For Rebecca, same thing. If you tried to find a Rebecca who's 28 years old, who lives in Portland, who's an online content creator, and who has roommates, it's probably going to be really challenging. But if you kind of, peel that back a little bit and think more generally about it, you can probably find somebody who's in their mid to late 20s, who is active on social media, who's kind of an influencer in that way, or somebody that personally, or a friend of yours who's very active in that way on social media, and who has some roommates. And so you can maybe generalize your personas a little bit to find people who kind of fit this model generally. And so don't stress out too much about trying to find the specific person who lives in that specific area. Find some people who kind of generally fit, your demographic, your persona type loosely there. Again, what that does is it'll help you then provide more insights that maybe you can make these personas a little bit more realistic, a little bit more well-rounded, based off these interviews. Might help you kind of streamline or fill this out a little bit more. So just wanted to make that note. Don't worry about finding the exact match for somebody who fits your persona. Strip it back, think generally about it. You're looking for somebody like Eli, who's maybe in their mid-20s, who's teaching or interested in teaching, who coaches, and who likes to go camping. That could be your primary persona, or somebody like that. And same for Rebecca, somebody who has roommates in their mid to late 20s, who's active on social media, who's kind of an influencer or something like that. So think more generally about your personas when it comes to finding people who match that. And that'll hopefully help provide some context around what we're looking for when we mean 3 people who fit in the mold of your primary persona. Let's talk a little bit about recording options. So in Thursday's second module, I talk a little bit about asking for permission to record. It's really important to do that. It'll help you in several ways. It allows you to just conduct the interview and to have an artifact to go back from. It'll be a part of our user interview summary that we put together. I'll talk about that here in a second. So there are a lot of different recording options that you can go with. Because of COVID, Zoom, everybody knows what Zoom is at this point. And so Zoom's free, up to 40 minutes per session. It allows you to record locally to your desktop. Zoom's a great tool to have to do a user interview. And you can just quickly hit record and it's there. You can record it right to your desktop or record it to a cloud file. And Zoom's a great way. Google Meet's another one too. If you prefer Google, you can do the same thing there. Or if maybe you didn't want to be on camera, a native voice recorder could work too. So, Apple iPhones have the kind of the voice recorder there right on the phone. And so you could do that also as well. Or if you wanted to record it from your laptop but had a phone conversation, you can do that too. The important thing will be that when we create our user interview summaries, that your recorded session is available on the cloud somewhere. So if you have a Google Drive account, or if you're leveraging YSU's OneDrive through Microsoft, that's a great place too. You're going to be linking out to those so that, as part of your artifact, you can go back and listen or rewatch your interview. And so it'll be a part of your user interview summary. A lot of different ways that you can go about recording. The important thing is that you would have a recording so that you can reference it and go back, make some notes from it, and then you can include it in your final recap also. So a couple of different thoughts, ideas around recording options there. During the interview, just some tips, some tricks there. So be an active listener, be in the moment, clear yourself of any distractions. What I like to do is to, put everything on, quiet my notifications, maybe go on airplane mode on my phone. Anything that kind of might pop up on screen that would be distracting for me, kind of take that off to the side. I'm just in the moment, being an active listener, and not worried about any other distractions that I might have. In the middle here, it might sound interesting or maybe not what you would expect, but take notes later. If you're going to be in the moment, if you're going to have a conversation with somebody, this is why it's so important to record it, because after the interview, go back and re-listen to the recording and make your notes then. When you're in the moment, you're in the interview, just be there. Go through your testing script, walk through it, have a conversation with somebody, and be curious in that moment. Go back and reference your recording to take the notes, to find the patterns, to jot some notes down and things like that. And then finally, when you're in the interview, maybe as soon as it ends, do a quick summary. While things are fresh, while things are still top of mind, as soon as it ends, maybe jot down 2 to 4 sentences that kind of act as your kind of initial takeaways. Now, once you go back and you listen to your recording, you re-listen to it, you can tweak that summary, but at least you've got kind of the initial start of kind of your main takeaways from that interview itself. So here's maybe a sneak peek, if you're watching these videos, if you're making sure you're keeping up with the content of what you'll be creating next week. And so if you wanted to get a head start on your interviews, get a jump start on next week and on the final project, this would be a great time to do it. Sneak peek for you here. So after you've conducted your interviews, what we're going to be doing is creating a recap of them and providing a summary or an overview of your conversations. These typically include some information about the user itself, about the interview, the person you interviewed, a summary of the interview, a link to watch or listen to that interview, and a pull quote. So something that they said that you found interesting. These recaps really help to serve as an artifact that can be referenced later, especially if you find yourself working on a team or with other designers. They can go back and kind of see your kind of quick notes and also listen or watch, but then also for yourself, in this project, acting as a solo designer, when you get further along in the process, you can go back and listen to those just to make sure that you're hitting the high notes and making sure you're taking care of some of the things you might have heard in your user feedback. So here's just an example of one that I've created before. I've got just some quick notes about when it was recorded, how long it might be, some basic demographic information about who this individual is. You see I've got my pull quote, a quick summary about that session, what environment it was done in, so how did I record it, and then links to watch the full video there. Maybe here's another one, maybe a little bit more detailed. Again, when it was recorded, some basic demographic information about that individual. So if you go back to Eli's, maybe instead of shopping frequency, it's how often does this person go camping? Or how much is this person posting on social media, perhaps, in the case of Rebecca. And so for this one, Emily is 35. She's a financial analyst. She shops at Kroger once a week. It was recorded on Zoom. Again, I can click to watch it. And here I've just highlighted some themes. And again, if I'm creating multiple summary documents based off that, I'm going to have these on each one. So primary goal in the app, she doesn't use the app. She leverages the desktop. How often does she use ClickList? Well, she's kind of very likely to use it itself, use ClickList, but on desktop. And the shopping list usage kind of is very rare. So these might be my actual objectives that I had in the interview itself. So in this case, I had 3. I wanted to know what their primary goal was within the app. Did they use ClickList, and did they use the shopping list feature? And so I can kind of see the trends, see the patterns across all my interviews that I've had. I've got a recap and a pull quote there. So let's talk though about this module itself. That's a sneak peek, what we're going to be doing next week. For this module itself, maybe start thinking about who you're going to be interviewing that matches kind of the generic version of your persona. You could do this in several ways. You can reach out to friends, family, coworkers, or more. The important thing is that you're going to have a conversation with somebody who fits that persona definition. So maybe start thinking about how you might plan on finding those participants, what technology you might use. Do you want to do Zoom or Google Meet or FaceTime, voice recorder? And then maybe how are you feeling about your first interview itself? Are you excited? Do you maybe seeing the value of what, as we get closer to it, that it's going to bring? Nervous? Again, that's natural. That's normal. I'm still nervous when I go into my interviews. It's once you get your first one in under your belt, it's a little easier. You're just think about it, approaching it as you having a conversation with somebody who might be your user and wanting to make sure their voice is heard as it relates to your product. So again, this is one of those easier modules just to get you thinking about what you're going to be doing next week, get you thinking about the recruiting process, how you're going to set these things up. So just jot some notes down about how you plan on finding your participants, what technology you might be using along the way, and then how you're feeling about as we go into our first interview there. If you have any questions, feel free to add those too. Happy to jump in and answer those questions there. So do 4-4, I think that's Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Your answers to those questions, minimum 200 words, any additional thoughts, and looking forward to seeing what you do next week in your actual interview. So hopefully this is helpful, and I'll be checking out your draft of your test plan here over the weekend, and we'll see y'all next week. All right, thanks everybody.